Hello, Emerald. How are you?
Hi. Well, thank you for that. That was such a nice intro. And I love the intro song. I think by the end of the year, you're going to have to add some more verses to that. I told you so. The 2020 election was stolen.
Mhm. Amen. Amen. There are so many. I'm able to see you in backstage, and yeah, you were enjoying it. I could tell. And there are
It cracks
so
me
many
up.
other guests that when we play that, they're jamming to it, and got that smile on. And because we did, we told them so, didn't we?
Well, you told him so. That's a perfect intro.
Amen.
Yes, and it's a joke with other folks, and you're certainly one of them, Emerald. That you have to get a T-shirt that says, "I got to get a new conspiracy theory because all my old ones have come true." And you have been kind of an epicenter, certainly in the journalistic world. And isn't it amazing? People, other shows, a lot of shows don't want to have you on talking about this. Is
No.
what you have laid out, kind of you're putting and kudos to you. And I sent it to Dawn. General Flynn took that segment that you had about the gentleman from the Smartmatic. He was indicted with the stuff in the Philippines, additional charges with stuff with the Venezuelan former head of elections. General Flynn had it in his Truth Social post, 24 hours ago now, I guess. But he said President Trump will not be allowing machines in the elections, and those outside and inside the U.S. will be held accountable. But kudos to you, he had your segment embedded into his post.
Yeah. I mean, the general has been dogged about this issue, right? He's been one of those people on the ground since 2020 trying to show what happened. And I know you've covered this a lot on your show, more than anyone else, out there, as to the evidence, and laid it out, and sort of the groundwork on the grassroots investigations that have been going on, right? That I think are now going to see the light of day. And General Flynn, just the other day, I feel like we can more openly talk about this because the general said that there is an intelligence community product, right? A very detailed report that, thank goodness, based on my sources and what General Flynn has said openly, so I feel okay saying this, encompasses it all
Mm-hmm.
that is out there. I know for a fact that many in the intelligence community tried to take out certain parts. They tried to make sure that this report did not make its way to the president or see the light of day, but they were not successful, which is a rare moment, right, in this intelligence community. And so this very detailed report vindicates what I reported on, what you all have talked about on your show, and what many people at that event. I think Mike Lindell's going to be at the event this weekend as well, right?
He will
Have been
be.
saying
Yes,
for years. So there's been some real movement, and General Flynn's been a major part of that.
he has. And I won't mention his name, but somebody you certainly know. This person was relaying, hey, there was some log jams, things are moving forward, and um, 47 had gotten the complete package to himself, right? So
Yeah.
the as you know, we've mentioned names before in these shows. Sometimes for good intentions or just trying to be good staff officers, sometimes they, instead of insulating, they isolate the president. And I don't think on this topic the president should be isolated.
Well, I think a lot of that's for self-preservation, right? Because he'll have to ask, well, why wasn't something done about this in the first term, or why wasn't this done sooner? I think that this report looks very bad for the intelligence community, and I think that they don't want people to know what they knew. I don't know if you saw the tweet I put out in the last couple weeks. I've done several of them, the same
Mhm.
kind of the same iteration, the same language, that you're about to find out this, you're about to find out that. Well, you're about to find out, which I know you've covered on this show already, that the Venezuelan cartels essentially own the rigged voting machines, right? Which is tied to
Yes.
the Venezuelan government. And you're about to find out that the CIA knew this. They've known all about these machines for years, and did nothing about it, at the very least, right? I think we'll find out more than that. But at the very least, they did nothing about it. So any detailed report that includes every aspect of the rigged elections and the voting machines and the system at large is very, very damning for the agency.
You know, we have every once in a while we'll have Brian Kennedy and Frank Gaffney on together
Oh
or
yeah.
simultaneously, and they become two very good friends. Brian spoke at our event on 5 July. Bannon zoomed in for about 30 minutes. Patrick was there. We had Kurt Weldon speak at it, Trennis Evans. And Brian Kennedy talks about, I believe it was October 2024, he was invited up to speak at an event in Michigan. And I think the CIA was involved in it was an event that they were involved in sponsoring or something. But he talked about the Venezuelan connections, Smartmatic, the elections. Two CIA folks came up to him afterwards. I think it was a man and a woman, and they said to him, "Thank you. Of course we know about this. Of course we use this to enhance U.S. interest overseas. Of course we know this. Thank you for saying it. We just can't say this back in Langley."
Yeah, I've heard Brian tell that story. And here's what I also believe we'll find out. I was looking back as I did my super thread, which people can go see on X at Emerald Robinson. I have it pinned to the top. As I was going back through my notes and looking at what I had, and you know, that involved also going back through my then Twitter account, you know, now X, and looking at what we were saying at the time post 2020. What I realized, and this is a conversation I've had with a lot of people, is that we had it pretty dead to rights pretty fast, you know, within a month or two. We kind of had out there. I didn't realize how right we had it so quickly. Probably had like what, 90%. And then we've learned now maybe the 10% more that ties it all together. But we were pretty dang close in late 2020, early 2021. And that's been something that's been really interesting to me, is that, you know, this all could have been resolved before, you know, Biden's inauguration. We had it pretty close. And if we had it that close, just being kind of open source people and then talking to, you know, some people on the inside, just look what the intelligence community, just think about what the intelligence community, who had all the access to all of this information, you know, through different sources of information, had. So that's been something that's been really interesting to me as I go back through the thread and lay it all out. Now, I've obviously filled in some holes since then, but it was kind of more minor aspects of the story. As far as what happened in 2020, obviously there's a lot more new information that hasn't been reported about 2024. I know you all probably dropped a few hints here and there. I've dropped a few hints, but I don't, you know, that's a story I'm not at liberty to tell yet. So when that all comes together with 2020, I mean, it's one of the most, it might be the most important story in our nation's history, except for the founding, right? Yeah. Because in this, we're saving the constitutional republic. They set up the constitutional republic. We're in the middle of almost losing it and trying to save it now.
We are.
It's amazing. You know, it continues. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Warren, go ahead. I mean, I know we've had a lot of guests on here follow up with Emerald, that stuff they've said. I'm sure you got a ton of questions.
Well, first off, I've read a lot of your stuff. I love it that so many people are bringing God into this. I hear about God on every podcast I watch. To me, it's everything that's going on with the coalition, with everyone that's working like this. It's God's glory, and I love that you just said it's not yours to tell. That's not you, you know, taking it for your ego or something. I love that. And is there anything big that you have found just lately that has really put things together for you that you said, oh, that's how that went? Wow, what's going on there? That's a trip.
What have I found lately that's like that I can share?
And that's a hard one. Sorry, as far
that's
as
the hard part,
share,
right?
What you can share, yeah.
I think that what brings it together, what was sort of an aha moment, was how the people, some of the actors, the American-based actors, right, the American citizens that were in play, because you always wonder, how does this get coordinated? Okay, like there has to be somebody we talk about these grand conspiracies a lot of the time, whether it's the WEF and the globalists and, how they're coordinating world events and, the elections are a part of this. And you think, well, there has to be a middleman. There has to be someone who makes this happen besides George Soros, right?
Right.
And so I think in the last few months, I've seen some of these, what I would call traitors. They are traitors, right?
Yes.
Who have worked to install this system. And in doing so, they're basically actors of a foreign government. And how they're connected. And it's not just Democrats, okay? I think sometimes we fall into the trap of saying, oh, well, Democrats stole the election. Well, sort of, okay, but they had some help from Republican uniparty. And when you get down to it, it's not really party, right? It's the uniparty swamp creatures that want to control America for their own interests. And so you learn some real people and how they're connected to some names we know, right? And how this all is used and how it proliferated and how it gets installed and why it stays installed, right? Why we haven't changed this system. And a lot of it, I think, goes back to primaries. It's not just for general elections. It wasn't just used to take out Donald Trump. And it's not just America. It's other countries. And I think that's why, too, there's a hesitancy amongst some of, I would say, even the patriot leaders, people who are read in. You got to understand, there's a lot of people who've been briefed on this information. It's not just you all. It's not just me. It's people who were in roles that made a difference. It was other journalists, sure.
We
and they chose not
Congress.
to talk about it. They chose not to follow
We
up.
talked to Congress.
There were
people,
elected members of Congress. There were people sitting
one
in key
is very
positions
prominent.
right now, and they did nothing. Now, some of it, maybe they were afraid of the fallout because it has implications beyond the United States, and it could probably lead to the fall of governments, but yeah.
Great.
I know one prominent Republican congressman. You see this person on the news all the time. He was briefed. It was so he said, "This is so explosive, but we can't touch this before the election. It's gonna be, we got to deal with it after the election."
I know exactly who that is. And it's kind of the guy, we'll drop some more hints. It's kind of the guy who's always going out there with great sound bites and saying he's going to do something and then doesn't. That's his
Bullet
MO.
points all the time. Yeah.
Fox News darling.
It's frustrating because
Taylor.
What's that?
I was asking her if she has paid attention or seen much of Sean Taylor. We have really started bringing Sean out, and it's out of a small little town here in Tennessee, and he has been investigating. I mean, seriously investigating the money laundering and everything from the, and it goes throughout the nation, and we are hearing about it. It leads from a little town here in Tennessee all the way up to Obama and probably the SES and all that good stuff.
What town in Tennessee?
Morristown.
Right?
No, Morristown.
Morristown?
Yeah, let me make sure that actually it's not, and I do all their floors there in that area, but I can't remember it exactly.
I grew up near Tennessee.
We spoke about that. You were on the PPN show one night. Yeah. Well, I tell you what, it's out Spring Hill area.
Mm-hmm.
Springville.
Mm-hmm.
You know where I'm talking about, past Hermitage and or past Hendersonville. It's the other way. It's past Hendersonville out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, is it Williamson County, Tennessee, where they had the flipping of votes? And I can't remember, I think it was something Williamson that we talk about, right? Where that was sort of an early indicator that there was problems with the voting machines and that there were people who have been raising flags about theirs. And there's the report that has yet to be disproven related to that county. So it's happening all over the place. And I think that it's a little bit hard for a lot of Americans to stomach that our elections could be so rigged, right? Because to them, it feels overwhelming and it feels like, well, how do you get out of this mess? So that means, voting doesn't matter is what a lot of them, worry about. Then they feel like there's no way to change it. But or they just don't want to believe it. And then there's just those who think everything's fine. Like some of my, some people in my family who are a little bit on the older side, and they say, well, no, America doesn't work that way, right? So I think by this targeted dropping of, and it's going to be, your conference is going to be really interesting this weekend, right? Because you also have a lot of people who were affected directly by the Russiagate hoax. And then now to have all these documents dropping, and I think you all have had this scheduled for quite a while now, because I remember talking to people who were going months ago to this event, and it just happens to coincide with the release, the document releases from the ODNI, right, from Tulsi Gabbard, and a lot of these people are involved there. So this is going to be amazing to have all these people in the same room and talk about this as openly as we can now. But to reveal the Russiagate hoax for what it is and put the receipts out there, show the players, and then move to elections and release the evidence about elections and about, the players with that and how the 2020 election is stolen. I think it's easier for people to go from that point A of Russiagate. Okay, they took part in a coup. It's right there in black and white at the very top level with the president, then President of the United States, Barack Obama. Then people can more readily digest that the same people who tried to commit a coup, then of course did another coup, right, by stealing the election. So the way that they're laying it out, I think, is making it easier to digest for the American people.
And Admiral, I think it shows the ongoing conspiracy. This thing has been going on for a while.
I agree.
And it's going to
agree. And look, it's not like there's not a conspiracy anymore, because you saw, I've been saying for a few months that Brennan still had in some way operational control of the CIA and the intelligence community. And now you had General Mike Flynn and a couple other relevant figures like J. Michael Waller, who's excellent source on the intel community, saying that as well. So confirming that. So there is still effectively a coup, right? When they try to stop an intelligence report from making its way to the president because it's damning for themselves, there's still a coup. There's still major problems, but at least shedding light on the elections process and Russiagate. Now there needs to be mass firings. There needs to be arrests. Yes. And it sounds like I just heard before we jumped on right now that there is encouraging behind the scenes movements in the way of actual arrest. You know me. Yes. I'm waiting until I see them, because I heard indictments were coming in 2018, and I really hope this news that people are sharing about forthcoming indictments in Russiagate are legit. And then we need to have mass firings, because a lot of these people that are still embedded in our intelligence community, especially at the CIA, are loyal to John Brennan. He hired them. Their career, he's responsible for their careers. So there has to be a mass gutting in the intelligence community.
Gutting and accountability. I mean, folks need to be held accountable. And I was gonna your opinion on this. Martina said it, and going back to one point, you said Martina, when he was on the show last, he could see it tilted in him. He goes, I don't understand how people born here in this country, Americans, could be traitors to their country, right? I don't get that. And I've heard from several folks in government now who've been briefed, commenting, wow, it took private citizens who, or at least were no longer in government, to go do this stuff, pull these threads, get this stuff out, and then hand it to the folks in government. And I think that was a surprise. And also, from what I'm hearing, the folks in government gave kudos to, hey, you guys made a difference. The citizens did this.
I hope they do. That kind of remains to be seen, right? They get kudos behind the scenes, but will they get kudos in the public eye as the government? I think the government is in a position where they have to admit that they failed at the very least. Many parts of the government were complicit in it. So we will see if they admit that it took private citizens. I have a feeling there will be a lot of rewriting of history, as there will be in the journalists, right? With journalism, no one else will touch it. As you said, to this day, it's rare that I get an invitation to come on a show and talk about this. In fact, a lot of times if I am invited for whatever reason onto a show, I'll even get the little, whisper, oh, could you just stay away from election fraud? Can you just not talk about the machines? And mostly they just they don't trust that I won't. So they just don't have me at all. I think you will see, especially in this, so-called conservative space, right? You're going to see a lot of journalists rewriting how they discussed it or how they reported or pretending they always knew this was it. They were always on board with reporting on the steal. And I just don't know if I can let that happen. I will probably be doing a lot of calling out because everyone was more than happy for me to get canceled and shut down over this so that I wouldn't talk about it. They did not want me to talk about it. They didn't want to be anywhere near me talking about it. And I think you'll see some of that rewriting of history in government as well. Probably particularly that certain congressman, right, who got briefed and said, oh, this is just too explosive. We can't touch this before the election. Right. And he was perfectly willing to let another election get that congressman. And when we can tell that story, let's come back, you and I. Let's just hammer him by name because he wasn't going to do anything about it. And he was in a position of power where at least he could have raised the alarms, right? He could have held some congressional hearings because this is a Republican. They were in power in the House. He was perfectly okay with letting the election get stolen again. Now, thankfully, you and I know what happened, and that wasn't allowed to happen. But this particular congressman would have let that happen. And I guarantee you, when it all comes out, he will tell a very different story about that exchange with the people who briefed him. Don't you suspect?
Yes,
I think so. And I was, Warren, your thoughts on this is that it's one thing if someone tells you something and you're not in a position of authority to do something, you're just an average civilian. But when you are a powerful congressman and you're now made known and this person is not refuting what you're saying, now you have an innate constitutional responsibility to take action, and they didn't.
Amen.
I've also I went ahead and put it, since it's on my thread, I'll say it. I mean, there were so many big voices who, many of them consider themselves journalists, right? Who were briefed on this and did not do the story. And that includes Charlie Kirk. He got this briefing and didn't want anything to do with it. There's just a lot of people who say they support, the country and the president, but when it came to talking about our elections being stolen, they didn't want to get near it with a 10-foot pole. And so I think all these people are going to do a total 180 when this comes out. We expected it to be coming out soon. I think that's been delayed maybe a little bit. So I don't know. Every week I just wait and hope that we can tell the full story very soon.
Talking with in DOJ, we talked to them about not elections per se, but a lot of I'm using euphemisms for a reason because I don't want to telegraph things to the wrong people, but shenanigans out here in Nevada state politics.
Yeah.
And we made sure Maine Justice knew about it.
Mm-hmm.
But that person in Maine Justice was very much more in a positive mood that things are now moving forward. They was kind of blocked. This person was frustrated, but things seem to be at least moving ahead again, not longer in this holding position, which this person was relieved to know. And, to your point, on our 5 July event, we had 3 secretaries of state Zoom in and just talk about what they were doing, what's going on. And one was, he's been on the show before, Chuck Gray, Secretary of State of Wyoming. Denny Hoskins, Secretary of State of Missouri, and then Chris Warner, Secretary of State of West Virginia. And all of them said but according to people, we had about 200 people show up. Not bad for 5 July on a 4th of July weekend. Folks came out to listen for 8 hours. Our whole thing. Mark Cook gave a whole presentation. We showed Emerald how hand counting process. We took 5 minutes, showed kids 12 to 17 years old. I sent it to Dawn and Holly Kessler. And showed how kids can do this. And they did it faster than the adults, working with Shelby Bush, who've been doing this hand count method. It's called the accountable method. There's several out there. And they did it faster than the adults. It was a moderately complex ballot, and they had 100% accuracy. And you had triple level redundancy all triple level transparency to make sure it was fair. But all these secretaries of state said, you all made the difference. You empowered us in our positions. Now we've got to deal with all of them had rhinos in a particular branch of their state government that they had to deal with. And then Chris Warner said an amazing thing in West Virginia. He said, I had a chance to go to a women's Republican event, and the whole damn topic was hand counting. And he goes, 4.5 years ago, it was a minority position. It's now the main position because of you all.
Glad to hear that. Wow, that's nice.
And I do think that that's been the positive out of this, is that more people on the ground have gotten engaged and come to understand the problems we have. Whereas, I mean, all of us were guilty of this, right? Thinking that there were adults in charge and that there were people probably in Washington, D.C., that we knew there was a lot of corruption, right? We never denied that, and especially after 9/11. But we also felt like there was at least somebody, right? That somebody's running the country, right? We didn't think we were, totally compromised to the point that cartels in Venezuela were dictating helping dictate who was in office. So at least a lot of people across the country have woken up. They're getting engaged. They're learning civics, right? You got to understand, most Americans don't even understand basic civics. So we got at least a civics education since 2020. So that's been good. And people are more engaged. So that's great. Now, as far as it's interesting that your DOJ contact said that. I just also had a conversation today with someone in the DOJ who's saying, yeah, there's some good movement, right? And I have heard, in particular to elections, there's some good movement, but I think there's a little bit of frustration that maybe we don't that the Trump administration isn't moving as quickly as the Biden administration did, right, with arrests. Mm-hmm. The Biden administration moved along very quickly, even though they didn't have the justification to do so. They were ready to go day one. They had mobilized their assets all over the entire country to start arresting trespassing grandmas. And the Trump administration has evidence of true treason, of seditious conspiracy, which is what they projected in the Biden regime, right? But this is true seditious conspiracy. And it's hard to get movement on indictments. And it's hard to get them to prosecute low-hanging fruit on the left. And particularly even to go after, how we've all complained, and there's been a lot of media coverage and sound bites from Republican members of Congress and even law enforcement officials about what I call cover revolutionary protests, right? So like what we saw in Los Angeles a couple of months ago, but they don't really prosecute those. They complain, they'll pick them up, but most of them kind of plead out. They don't even get, asked about who organized you or how did they don't, there's no one following the trail and doing a real investigation. So there's still a problem there. And I said this just a little bit, actually right before we jumped on the show right now, while I was sitting here just kind of working and waiting to get started. I tweeted, is President Trump serious about prosecuting the communists inside the government? Absolutely. Okay. He is. I talk to people who advise him on this all the time, but are President Trump's advisors on the inside, okay, that are surrounding him, serious about prosecuting the communists inside the government? Absolutely not, from what I've seen. So I hope that I'm not right, and I hope we do see some indictments and arrests, at least related to Russiagate, over the next few days and few weeks.
And we had Mike on. Warren and I had Mike Lindell on last week for the full hour. It was great. Just wound him up and let him go, right? And
you just set him up and he goes.
He goes. Hey, man, I tell you, we would not have an energy crisis. Mike is Mr. Perpetual Motion. He just got energy out the yin yang. But he mentioned it, and I've heard it from folks. Trump's Tina. I want to bring up Tina Peters. Trump said, get her out, right? And it's not. I think now that Peter Ticton's on, that's probably a good thing that he's got a rapport with Trump. But it's. I think there's frustration in the grassroots level because they go, well, we know what Trump said. Why is it not happening? And you got to wonder what's that. Is there a disconnect? And then I did talk to people saying, well, they want to do it the right way so they don't pull her out and they get something wrong and they push her back in again. And And I can understand that, but folks, like, I'm just bringing that back, that analogy. Trump's intent, the commander's intent is this, and it's not being executed with alacrity.
Too many pharmacies and insurance companies are blocking the medications that actually work. That's why I recommend All Family Pharmacy. They give you access to treatments like ivermectin now, starting at just $2 a capsule. They also have methylene blue, hydroxychloroquine, and so much more. They're helping you stay prepared, and they've dropped their prices by 25%. Also use promo code LindellTV, you save even more. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell. Use promo code LindellTV and get the medicine you need. Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nirvanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at nirvantahealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nirvanta instead and experience the difference. Go to nirvantahealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally. With everybody talking about making America healthy again, I thought today'd be a great day to talk to all my fellow patriots about the importance of making your homes healthy again. Well, we have proudly partnered with airwaterhealing.com and their revolutionary whole home air purification system. The V3 from Air Water Healing does 3,000 square feet of purification. It eliminates dust, mold, viruses, and odors. But here's the part I love. They require no filters to ever be changed and virtually no maintenance. Whether you suffer from asthma, allergies, seasonal bronchitis, or just want to protect your family from the flu or even greater threats, don't wait to get your V3 from airwaterhealing.com today. Use code Lindell for 20% off in savings and free shipping. That's promo code Lindell at airwaterhealing.com.
And that's what exactly happened all during the first term. In fact, I knew one of Trump's body men quite well. He lived in my building, and he would say, Trump would write an executive, look at an executive order, think it was going to get signed, and then someone, one of the attorneys, staff attorneys would come out and just throw it away. They would just play like they were going to do what he said, and then they would, the White House counsel Pat Cipollone was very bad based on all the sources that I spoke to, many of them, for pretending he was going to do something and then just not doing it because he thought he knew better than Donald Trump, right? And he was just a coward, and he wanted to stay in good with his swamp creatures to get a good job after the administration. I think it's a little bit better this time, which I told someone else today in a private conversation, and they said, it's not a very good bar. You're talking about, absolutely everybody subverted him in the first term to, some people doing what he says this term. What I have noticed, though, that I think is good, and this just hit me when you were saying that, and when you specifically noted my boss, Mike Lindell, he seems to have a better connection to the outside of the White House this time around.
Yeah.
Whereas I know he was very insulated in the first term, particularly with his son-in-law, being very hands-on in the administration. I know the body man told me that Trump only talked to about a dozen people on any given day during the first term, so he seems like he was much more isolated, and they controlled more. There was more gatekeeping. Now, Susie Wiles still does some gatekeeping, and I've been critical of her, but it's not as bad as the first time. And I see Trump interacting more with people on the outside and getting back to Peter Tickton. I think it's great that he's on the case for Tina Peters because he is a friend, a personal friend of the president's. So he can bypass the gatekeepers and he can fill him in on what's really going on and what they are not doing. So there's accountability for when Trump tells the DOJ to assist in this matter, because they had dropped the ball initially. There's no denying that. Trump said, get her out. And then they kind of did this, half-hearted effort, right? And since Trump's been filled in and, Mike tells him, Peter Tickton tells him, there has been more coordination, more, enthusiasm from the DOJ to help her. I'm still unclear on, and I've asked this question of multiple people, lots of people, both inside and on the outside. Peter Tickton, her attorney. I've asked anybody that I think would know about this, why is she not considered a federal whistleblower? Especially given this intelligence product we know that the president has now seen, right?
Yes.
Related to her elections.
Yep.
It totally validates.
And as you've heard,
She is a whistleblower. She could be in federal custody, federal protective custody now.
Yes.
A lot of folks you've talked to, certainly more than I do, but I've talked to several, and I hear this phrase, and Tina, she's become a personal friend besides just knowing her. I mean, she's just a wonderful woman. What the actions she took that resulted in the Mesa County 1, 2, and 3 were kind of like the Rosetta Stone for folks then to kind of understand what was going on. So her actions were integral to this thing. And if you remember, she, like every other election official in this country at that time, she thought everything was honky-dory until her own constituents told her, not on the presidential election, it was I think one in 2021, something was wrong. And then she started looking into this stuff. But I've heard from several folks, which the actions she took, the results produced from those actions were like the Rosetta Stone that helped them understand where to go look.
And she saved that data. So that data exists and they can go and look at, it's there, whereas it wouldn't have been before. And the thing is there's now, so she was early, but there's now so much that we know that vindicates what she did. And I think it's high past time. I think we've known this for a while now, that there could be more assistance for her. I know they're waiting to see how this plays out. She had her writ of habeas corpus hearing, and they felt like it went well, but this woman has been through so much. And if it was the shoe was on the other foot, whether this person was innocent or guilty or whatever, if it was the Biden regime, they would have already had their person out of there. And you know that. I just will greatly cheer the day when Tina Peters is out of jail. I think this is atrocious that she's still in there. And I do believe that she is afforded federal whistleblower protections by this moment. So I think every day that goes by is wasted. And I hear their excuses too. I mean, I hear them, but I've heard them in regards to a lot of issues where they say, oh, well, we can't do this now. And then the time runs out and the clock runs out. And that's essentially what a lot of the Washington establishment is doing right now. Look at what they're doing in the Senate. Okay. They're doing pro forma here, pro forma sessions. So they don't have to confirm President Trump's nominees and his picks, because the rhinos feel they can just wait him out, and they probably hope that they lose the majority even more in the midterms, and they can go back to business as usual, because that's what they do. They literally, and even the deep state right now, until there's mass firings and arrests, they think they're just waiting out this administration again, like they did the first time around. They'll throw wrenches in it here, to try to slow him down. The careers will slow walk, some of the rule changes at whatever agency they're at, to try to slow down the Trump agenda and cause problems. I just talked to Tara Lee Rodas today, the HHS whistleblower with the children, and she let me know that the people the careers who are in DHS are currently slowing down the process of finding these children. I mean, how evil is that? But that is what they will do. So until there's some real decisive action taken on the people from what President Trump tells the people that he has appointed to do, this is how Washington, D.C. is going to operate. They're just going to try to slow him down and wait out the clock. And unfortunately, Tina Peters is caught up in that.
Yeah. It's a shame that the devil worshipers can just do anything they want and cheat, and we have to do things by the law. You know, it's just, it's freaking ridiculous. To me, it looks like this whole thing's on a schedule. You know, it's got to be. But to y'all's point, both of you, you were talking about how Trump is listening to people. And it's the same time, Matt, that the coalitions started combining and really talking, and everybody found out that Mark was doing other things, you know, helping other coalitions, and everything came together. And it's like, don't y'all think it was like, wow, everything just opened up? And I think we're fixing to have a lot of whistleblowers come through, because there's a lot of people that have been blackmailed and bad stuff going on, pictures taken of them in really bad situations. And I just feel like that it's all fixing to come out. I feel very good. I have from the beginning. Yeah, I wanted to come yesterday, just like everybody, but I feel good. I hope I'm right.
To his point, Emerald, you know, it's interesting. A lot of us were kind of working in silos on election integrity stuff.
Yeah.
And I probably year and a half ago, I mean, made concerted outreaches with Mike and with Garland Favorito and Voter G, Holly Kessler, all these different groups. And, you know, and if you can just bury your ego for a little bit and get aboard for the mission, it's amazing what happens. And but I got to give kudos. I mean, you know, Mike got spears and arrows and my pillow and all that crap, but you know, he kept that topic in the national conscious continuum better than anybody.
Well, and he's the only reason some on the left have even heard about it, really, right? Because he would go and do Jimmy Kimmel and let them make fun of him just to get the message out there. And what you said is so important, is that there was communication, coordination. What I have noticed, just being a journalist observer, covering all this in Washington, D.C., the left coordinates really well. And you see it, there was a remarkable difference between the Trump White House and the Biden White House. The Biden White House, the morale was low because they were, you know, the president was senile. They were still all mission oriented, right?
Yes.
They were in it together, and there really wasn't egos. The left is very mission driven. It's the same with the press pool, okay? They're very mission driven. The left-wing the liberal girls are so kind to each other. They'll help each other out. They're friends. They coordinate. But the so-called conservatives in the press corps, they do not coordinate at all. There's a major problem. They don't have each other's back. They don't even try to be friendly with one another. And I saw there was much more knives out in the Trump White House trying to get ahead than there was in the Biden White House. It was like getting that position, that Fox contract after the administration, right? Or getting the big figure job, or getting a promotion within the White House and becoming, and hopefully one day becoming a cabinet secretary. It was all self-interest rather than the greater mission, which was saving our constitutional republic. They were knifing each other while we were in the middle of a coup with these bad actors like Brandon and Obama trying to take out the sitting president. And so that's why we have been losing for so long. I hope there's a turn in that. And so those bad actors in the first Trump White House, right, who were just looking to get ahead, they were able to keep Trump isolated. So that's why that persisted, right? And a lot of the things didn't get fixed. Like I said, this time, like the grassroots are talking to each other, right, which is good. I'm trying to work on some press coordinating here, and there's a few other people trying to do that too. Still some work to do there. But then there's Trump talking to outside people, which didn't happen so much before. They totally kept him isolated. He talks to Mike. He talks to General Flynn. He talks to Peter Tickton. He talks to these people on the outside and says, hey, I know they're telling you they're doing this, but they're not. And this is what's really happening. And that's so essential this time around.
And I put you in the category, you, Laura Logan, Sarah Carter, John
Lara's great.
Solomon. You just kind of just follow the facts. And I,
Yeah.
I, I don't I don't people may guess your political affiliation, but I would say you remind me of General Holtz on this show quite a lot. Sometimes Tony Schaefer, we'll probably get him on next week. I love what Tony said. He goes, people got to get, I mean, not Tony, General Holt, you got to get out of your mind our versus egos. Look at the words behind Warren's head, we the
Yeah.
people. It's we the people versus the City of London, Basel, Bacon International Settlements, the WEF, the WHO. That's what you got to start thinking.
Amen.
It's so true. And being a journalist in the White House press pool and watching how Congress and the deep state really operated made that solidified that for me. And I've always been very clear for people, and that's what I think journalists should do. Every journalist has a bias. Give me a break. We're people. We're human. There's only maybe a couple of people that I've ever met in my entire life that I think really might not have a bias, and they're kind of like robots, right? They also don't have a sense of humor or anything. They almost don't seem human. I always say where I'm coming from on, say, my ideology. I'm conservative, I'm a preacher's daughter. I'll tell you exactly all about me, but that doesn't change the facts. I might feel a certain way about it, but it doesn't change the facts. And so and the problem we have in the country is not just Democrats. Republicans have been complicit in this, and they've risen to power and they've enriched themselves. And it is we the people. It really is we the people. And we've only gotten this far to 2025 with still a shot at saving our constitutional republic because we the people who were not in media, people who were not in government, who stepped up and said, this is not right, and refused to let it go. The parents at the school boards, they changed, particularly in my state of Virginia, they were instrumental to the 2017 flip in power in my state. But just holding the schools accountable. I mean, that's what has been so encouraging in the times when it looks so dark. And there's times it did look dark in the Biden regime because I was surveilled by the FBI. I thought at any moment they were going to knock on my door, and because I've been a journalist and I reported something, they were going to find some way to construe that into some kind of indictment. And I think had there been a second 4 years under a Biden regime, whoever was actually installed in the Oval Office, I think that would have happened. I just don't think they could quite do that yet with journalists. But I think they were headed there. But then when it would get so dark, I was encouraged to see what was happening with grassroots people on the ground, and the people standing up and fighting, and to their own detriment. I mean, there were a lot of these people who had businesses, right? They had small businesses and just a medium-sized city, not a big city or anything, just whose business was adversely affected because they took a stand against what was going on in the country. So it will be we the people.
Or it's like Chaz and Warren. I mean, they got together, created PPN. Mark Cook, walked away from multiple businesses and said, I just got to start educating folks on the election ecosystem on a larger scale. Mike Lindell risked everything, got to destroy him. Patrick Byrne,
destroyed him.
$75 million, right? Just this has got to get done. And recently, I'd love to have your comment on this. I had several folks that asked me when we had our 5 July event. He goes, well, are folks finally donating? Are they stepping up? And I said, no. I said, people are just making it happen out of their own pockets. And he goes, well, why? And I was like, because the damn republic is in peril. That's why. Either shit or get off the pot. Do something.
Yeah. Well, people have asked me over the years, like, why didn't you just, say it in a different way? Or, you could have kind of reported on it and kept your mainstream job. But you really couldn't. There was a separation after 2020. You had to pick, were you going to go really tell the truth or go for it no matter what? And I think that the people who have anteed up their money, who've given up their careers, we see a lot of them are parents, right? But they are getting back to what we started with. mostly it's a group of believers, not all of us, right? There's some of us who aren't, but largely it's a group of believers, and my faith would not allow me to do anything otherwise, to be honest.
Right.
And then I have small children, you know, and I hope one day I'll have grandchildren. And I want them to live in the country that our founding fathers set up for them. I actually live right in the middle of about 3 founding fathers' homes. I can drive just a matter of minutes to each of them, you know? And it's a special place for me to raise my children and explain to them the ideals that we were founded on and why it's so important that we protect them and that every day we have to fight for them. Because there's always the other side trying to end that and the threats to our freedoms. At some point you had to make a choice, and I'm so glad that many people stepped up. I hope, I mean, I just think about sometimes if every person, you know, not everybody can afford $1, but most people can. If every person just gave $1 to the effort, right, to save the country and their freedoms, that's almost what it would take, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is you mentioned the fundraising. I hear this from a lot of, I'm not a fundraiser, right? I don't have to do that. I don't do that. But a lot of my friends who are such great activists, you know, out there working in different facets of saving our constitutional republic, it's really hard to get money. I hope that that's something that can change, that people will understand how important it is to give their money to these efforts, because the left does. And then what they don't raise, they just get from the cartels, we've learned, right? Now I learned how much funding flows from the cartels. So we have to fight that.
Amen. Amen. We can't just go out and sell dope.
Did you hear Flynn this morning?
Right.
It sell dope. Flynn this morning was on Bannon. He was on Charlie's show, and he purposely brought up twice Ukraine. They lost. Zelensky's neutered, but he said he's involved in a lawsuit with whistleblowers. $45 billion was laundered through Ukraine back to, he says, people in this country.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that train's about to end with Zelensky, too. It sounds like, based on, you know, foreign policy, national security, people who are well read in on that Zelensky, they may be thinking that they're done with Zelensky. He's becoming more of a liability than they can keep in place to make the money train, or, you know, the flow of money come through him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over in Ukraine in the next couple months. Yeah, but the corruption there, I think everybody knew that. And then with the Trump administration shining the light on USAID funding, and you see how many lawmakers' families are tied to these NGOs that then get the payouts from the USAID. It looks like a giant, right? The money laundering, the corruption.
Amen.
You know, Warren, and what Emerald said earlier, I was having some conversations with folks regarding Tina, specifically election integrity in general. As the page turns, and we've been proven that we were right, be careful these folks who are late to come and try to make money off of them saying, well, yeah, I'm now supporting Tina, or I'm now supporting election integrity. I just caution the audience, be careful, these latecomers, because they're going to come and they're going to exploit this. I know, sadly.
Yes, big time.
And also watch out for reporters who start covering the stories in a limited hangout way, right? They'll be given, here's what the intelligence community will probably do. They'll float some stories, some scoops to more mainstream type reporters, or some name that acts independent that you've not really seen elsewhere, right? But there'll be some insurgent independent reporter who was formerly left-leaning, is what it usually is. And they'll give them the scoops. And what it will be a way to push the audience to these people, and then to try to misdirect them from the true facts. So I expect that to happen when the evidence starts coming out as well. So the audience needs to be careful of that. That happened a lot with the Twitter files and the industrial censorship complex.
The 5GW side, Warren, right? Be careful of who's trying to influence you. And as you said, as Boone Cutler tells us, if they can't convince you, they'll influence the influencers who influence
Yeah.
you.
Amen. Amen.
So true.
Well, we appreciate you, Emerald, always, and don't be shy. Call us. We're ready to have you on if you've got stuff you want to get out.
Absolutely.
We don't shy away from it. We're all about the truth, and I don't care who freaking.
And because of that, when I can talk more, you all will be one of my first calls. I appreciate that, and I don't forget that.
And if you need floors done, Warren's company does great wooden floors. So
She's not
I
in
need
Tennessee
wooden
anymore.
floors.
She's a long
It's
way
so
away
funny
now.
you should say that.
Well, I can hook you up with somebody. And where'd you say you were again?
I'm outside of Charlottesville,
Virginia.
Virginia.
Okay, yeah. That's I'd love
Might be
to.
a little far.
So good to see you.
It's good to
Please
see you
don't
all.
be.
Thank
I know
you.
you're